They called it justice, but even the men ordered to carry it out sometimes asked to be replaced, not because they feared the condemned, because they feared what the sentence required them to become. Rome was not gentle. It crucified rebels. It fed prisoners to beasts. It executed without hesitation. Yet there was one punishment so severe, so symbolically violent, that even hardened executioners hesitated when its name was spoken. This was not simply an execution. It was erasure. And to understand why, we have to understand what Rome feared more than death itself. Rome did not rule the Mediterranean through emotion. It ruled through structure, law, discipline, hierarchy. Every crime had a category. Every category had a response. Roman justice prided itself on order. Steal from the state, and you were punished. Desert the army, and you were killed. Rebel against authority, and you were crucified publicly, your body displayed as a warning. But among all crimes, one stood apart. Not treason, not rebellion, not even murder. The crime was parricide, the killing of one's own parent. To modern ears, it is tragic. To Rome, it was cosmic betrayal. Because Roman society did not begin with the Senate or the emperor. It began in the household. At the center of that household stood the paterfamilias, the father. Under the legal doctrine of patria potestas, the father held absolute authority over his family. He controlled property, marriage, in earlier centuries, even life and death over his children. The Roman state saw the family as its smallest political unit. Undermine the father, and you undermine Rome. So when a child killed a parent, it was not treated as homicide. It was treated as an attack on the moral architecture of civilization. And for that crime, Rome reserved a punishment unlike any other. It was called Poena Cullei, the punishment of the sack. The sentence was delivered quietly. There were no cheers, no dramatic proclamations, just a silence in the courtroom that carried weight. Because everyone knew what came next. First, the condemned was stripped of status, publicly beaten, not out of rage, but ritual. The violence was symbolic. The message was clear. You have severed yourself from the natural order. Then the head was covered, not to spare shame, but to separate the condemned from the world of the living. What followed disturbed even professionals. A large leather sack was prepared. Inside it, executioners placed 4 animals: a dog, a rooster, a monkey, and a snake. Each carried symbolic meaning in Roman thought. The dog, associated with base instinct. The rooster, with vigilance turned to chaos. The monkey, with distorted humanity. The snake, with betrayal and silent threat. Together, they represented disorder, the inversion of Roman virtue. The condemned was forced into the sack with him, and it was sealed. And this is where the executioners sometimes faltered. Because, once sealed, the punishment was intimate. There was no distance, no clean blade, no quick release. Inside that confined darkness, panic took over. Animals struggled, scratched, bit. The condemned fought for air. The sack moved violently as suffocation set in. Executioners could hear everything: the muffled cries, the frantic impact against leather, the slow weakening. Roman sources rarely describe the details. That silence is telling. This was not spectacle. It was annihilation. And then came the final stage. The sack was carried not to land, but to water. A river, a harbor, the open sea. The Romans believed land was sacred. Burial connected the soul to memory, to ancestors, to peace. A parricide deserved none of it. The sack was thrown into the water. If the condemned survived the chaos inside, they drowned. No grave, no name carved in stone, no ritual for the soul. In Roman belief, this denied spiritual rest. The individual was erased from both society and afterlife. But it was not just death. It was expulsion from existence. Now, here is the part that unsettles historians. Poena Cullei was rare, deliberately so. Its power lay in its legend. Parents invoked it as warning. Judges referenced it as ultimate consequence. Writers mentioned it with hesitation. Even Roman legal texts sometimes avoided excessive detail, because its purpose was psychological. It hovered over society like a shadow. You could commit many crimes and still remain Roman. But kill your father or mother, and you ceased to belong to humanity. And yet beneath the law were real human stories. Sons driven by inheritance disputes. Daughters trapped in violent households. Families fractured by greed and power. Roman courts did not investigate trauma. They investigated violation of order. There were accusations used politically. Confessions forced. Enemies destroyed under the label of parricide. Once sentenced, reversal was nearly impossible. The sack awaited. And here is the deeper truth. The executioners were not monsters. They were civil servants. They carried out crucifixions, beheadings, public punishments. They were accustomed to death, but Poena Cullei required proximity. You could not swing a sword and walk away. You had to bind the sack, carry it, hear the struggle. Some later Roman accounts hint at reluctance, at revulsion, at heavy drinking afterward, but they still obeyed. Because in Rome, obedience was survival. And that reveals something uncomfortable. Civilizations do not maintain power through cruelty alone. They maintain it through normalization, through ritual, through convincing ordinary people that brutality, when framed as order, becomes duty. As centuries passed, Rome changed. Christianity spread across the empire. Ideas of redemption and forgiveness entered legal discourse. The concept of the immortal soul gained new weight. Poena Cullei became awkward, too pagan, too symbolic of ancient severity.